Got it.
Hello and welcome to Cairncast. Forgotten what number we're on, but this is the first one, I think, ever potentially with a coffee guest. Is it? Have we done any yet? I actually don't know. No, certainly this season. Just saying season like we're Mavericks of the podcasting game. But yeah, here we are. AdamsCoffeeGlasgow.
Hello, how are we?
I suppose my first question is, do we call you AdamsCoffeeGlasgow or
A lot of people like to
Adam
do that when it comes to like writing my name up on latte art throwdown boards.
If you meet someone at like a SmackDown, do they call you Adamscoffeeglasgow?
Sometimes it has happened to me. Yeah,
fair play. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing really well. Yeah,
Don't come around these parts very often.
No, unfortunately not. But maybe in the future now, I'll be here a lot more. So yeah, it's good to be in Edinburgh again.
Nice. Yeah, we're obviously in the roastery. Adam has kindly popped along. I guess for the people who don't know you or don't know about you or can't see you currently if they're not watching on YouTube, which they should be, do you want to explain like what it is you do? I guess we can delve deeper at some stage, but like surface level, like what's your gig?
Well, I'll just give you the 2-minute origin story.
Let's do it.
Okay, so essentially, what I'm currently doing now is I am working as a freelance coffee consultant and barista trainer. And I got to this point by starting out, just like most other people, getting a job in a cafe. And for me, it was my first ever job. I was working part-time for a big high street coffee chain.
Nice.
While I was still at school. And I just got that job through handing my CV into a job fair or something. And yeah, I was working there and I really fell in love with working on machine. And at the time, I was thinking I was really good. Like I knew my stuff.
Yeah.
Working really fast, faster than to keep the standards up high.
Well, that is probably the kind of thing that like a chain would value.
Yeah,
like,
speed over anything.
For your tempo.
Because I was fast, I was good.
Yeah.
And then
employee of the week maybe.
Yeah, I know exactly. Every month.
Every month.
And anyway, so yeah, I became pretty obsessed with trying to learn how to do latte art and do it really well. So I was on YouTube, Googling that, learning all the techniques from different people, and then quickly realised there's way more to coffee than just pouring fancy shapes in your lattes. So learned a bunch through there, kind of the basics of dialing in and different equipment and all these fancy machines and grinders. And I was like, I want to work with that kit. So I kind of just bounced around a few places. I said bye to the big street chain and bounced around a few spots, trying to find somewhere that was like speciality level, which is what I later learned what it was called. And
how many years back would this be then?
I started in coffee in 2016.
Okay.
And it wasn't probably until about 2018, 2019
nice.
that
so things were really starting to pick up momentum in specialty coffee. And
yeah, exactly. I think there was already a pretty decent scene, especially through in Edinburgh in that time, I think. And then I basically walked into a cafe one day and I got chatting with the owner, and we became pretty good pals over just talking about all the different sort of coffee gear you can get, all these special ways to make coffee and special coffees on the market. And he just kind of turned around and was like, "Here, do you want a job?" And I was like, "Yes, I would." And then from then on out, I was there for 2.5, 3 years. Of course, that place was Perch and Rest. Yeah, nice. Absolutely awesome place.
Which is that going from, well, let's go back a bit before I go into this bit, because I noticed when I did my due diligence that on your website there was something that I picked up on, and I've noticed you've done it twice now in this conversation already, which is that you have said on your website, it says, I started out with a part-time job in a popular high street chain when I was 16. You've never mentioned what the chain was, and I wonder, is that a conscious decision? Or?
No, I'll tell you, it was I started out in Costa Coffee.
Nice.
But I just, I don't know, I think when I'm just writing something down, especially on a public website or whatever, I was just being vigilant of mentioning names or people or brands, but I don't really care that much. Yeah,
because that's what I was wondering, was is that because you're not, is there any element of shame, or is it
no, absolutely not.
Personally, I don't think there should be, but
no, even Starbucks, Costa, Nero, what the big chains, whatever it is. I don't actually think you can get. I actually think baristas that come from those places tend to be really good in terms of learning how to obviously have a high customer service element, and obviously working quickly, prioritizing tasks, and then working to some kind of brand standard as well. Although it may be, in our eyes, maybe perhaps a bit flawed in terms of quality, but it's definitely optimized for speed.
Yeah.
And so you can get a lot of good skilled baristas coming from those kind of places.
Yeah, learning almost to like submit their own opinions in some areas, which actually, like, I feel sometimes as a barista, you tend to get more emphasis and excitement on the things that you enjoy, and actually sometimes, you know, I'd imagine in a high street chain, obviously they probably dampen that down a little and set your expectations at like, you can't just be giving, you know, this level of quality and spending 5-10 minutes on each cup of coffee and all these kind of things.
Yeah, exactly.
It's quite interesting. Do you think that chains in general have a bit of an unfair reputation among specialty coffee?
I think when it comes to like the product itself, I think it's probably pretty warranted. You know, I don't particularly go into a chain and enjoy the coffees they have on offer. You know, although, I mean, sometimes I can indulge in some kind of like fruit cooler drink or something like that, you know.
Frappuccino for me, chocolate cream.
Exactly. You know, sweet delight. You know, those things do work.
Yeah.
The whole point is that, you know, the coffee itself as a raw product isn't the best in those instances, and they can upsell you on all the creams and sugars and syrups. So they actually make double margins, you know, on the product itself as well as like the upselling. But
do you know
good
there's anything they can do to kind of improve that appeal, like with you or I? Do you think can you see them in the next 5 years getting to a point where we would walk in and order an espresso and feel confident about that?
I mean, at the end of the day, the volumes of coffee they're buying in are so high that, like, you know, I don't think they could just do specialty coffee. You know, they have to like appeal to like those bigger farms that have like stuff that on a mass scale. They could definitely have some kind of area for it, you know, just like how a lot of cafes, specialty cafes, will have their house coffee and their guest coffee. You know, they also have that secondary option. At least in Costa, they had the guest blend or the roast or whatever they called it, Old Paradise Street I think it's called in Costa. And they could definitely like do something wild with that, which would, you know, attract both people in the specialty market as well.
But I guess, like you say, you know, generally speaking, the kind of coffees that we would buy for like a small cafe in Glasgow or in Edinburgh, the size of the sack or the amount of coffee we're buying to fulfill that need is so small. For them, it wouldn't be worth it. Like, and I don't think they would manage to get something of kind of quality at that level. But
as soon as they, you know, as soon as they talk to their board of directors, they're going to be like, "Absolutely not! Are you joking?" Like, you know, at the end of the day, for these companies, it's just going to come down to the margins and the money they can make. You know, no matter how much branding goes into, marketing goes into the idea of quality behind it. Or at least that's how I feel from my knowledge of how the world works.
Oh, definitely. So you went from that experience, like young kid working for the man in the high street chain. Going into, so I kind of interrupted you before, but then you went to Perch and Rest. So people who don't know Perch and Rest, I mean, it kind of stood out for a long time when it emerged as like one of the highest kind of quality standard cafes, I would say, in Glasgow, with a lot of emphasis on, you know, spending a lot of money on good equipment. I remember we tried to sell coffee to them once, and they're like, "We only buy 90 plus coffees," and I was like, "Oh, we don't even have a Q grader." So
I know, but, you don't even can't say for sure.
Was you must have increased your knowledge, increased your experience like very quickly at that point?
Absolutely. Like it was a great place to, you know, learn about sort of trying to work at the highest level, you know, using some of the best equipment on the market at the time. And, you know, using techniques to get the most consistent extractions possible. You know, we had like the Seraphim brewers, for example, for doing like the auto pour overs, which we still had to, you know, go in and give it an agitation manually. But, you know, being aware of that fact and just experimenting, being encouraged to experiment, you know, not being like, even though we had these super expensive coffees, you know, still being told, hey, like make a brew, like check it out, like always adjust your dial in. You know, so it was a great place to have the freedom to experiment with all those sorts of things. Yeah.
And how has it evolved? Like how Perch and Rest itself, have they managed to maintain like that commitment to quality, or have they kind of had to diversify what they do to try and like stay sustainable? Because I think that's always a concern, that when you're just servicing like a small proportion of the market, it's like, how do you make sure you can actually get enough people through the door, I suppose? I
think they're probably just in the same boat as pretty much every other cafe. You know, you're basically just in this sort of, you know, economic climate and whatnot, just trying to stay afloat and get people in the door, like you say, but, you know, maintain your sort of quality standards. You know, I'm sure everyone gets hit with like the the big bills at some point, and they're like, okay, right, I need to maybe cut back here or there. But I think they still have a super strong focus on quality. So yeah, I'm always popping in there, even now, or even when I used to do my delivery shifts for Dairy Green, I'd pop in once I'd finished and just say hi to the guys and stuff. It's one thing. Sorry,
Karen.
No, it's just one thing I always really tried to keep. One thing I always really like to do is stay friends with everyone. Like I think when sometimes you leave a job, a lot of people just never come back. I always like to pop my head into places I used to work and just say hi.
Yeah, I think that's a good ethos. I was going to say I used to live really close to it when I was at uni, like literally across the road, and it didn't exist. And I was like,
oh my god!
If I'd been there like 5 years later, would have been very much a regular.
Yeah.
So from that point, so you've kind of had quite a traditional like evolution at this point into coffee. Like you started in the change, you've moved on to like a high-end specialty cafe. Was there a next step from there, Dairy Green?
Yeah, absolutely. So like when I was there in the cafe at Perch and Rest, like things were good, but like I had previously, up until that point, been going to uni to study computer network engineering, and I just chose that from school because I was actually suggested to do it from school because it was the thing I was good at. I was the computer guy,
right?
I'd be like doing work and someone would pop in the door and be like, "Is Adam in this class? We need him to fix our projector," And I'm like, yeah, okay. Yeah. And then, I'm like, okay, yeah, I'll go do that, sure. And then I'm in uni and I'm like, oh, everyone else in this room is the computer guy or girl, the two girls that were in my course. But
big fish in a small pond, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And then I realized, I actually just like kind of like building computers and gaming on computers. I don't necessarily like figuring out how to set up networks or the coding and stuff was pretty fun and all that. But anyway, I basically came to the point where I was like, right, this isn't for me. Although family pressures and whatnot, suggested I stick it in until the very end, which I basically got to the very last point without doing my dissertation. So very last point, I was like, I cannot will myself to do this during the pandemic and stuff as well. So I was like, do you know what? It's not what I want to do. I want to have a career in coffee. So I left at that point, but I still graduated with a bachelor's. Yeah, just didn't get the honours. Bit of a side topic.
Samesies. My mum was basically like, let's be honest, you're not going to commit yourself to doing a dissertation well enough here. Yeah. Maybe you just leave after year 3.
Yeah, well, I mean, after year 2, I was like, it's probably not for me. After year 3, it's probably not for me. Yeah. And then all the way through year 4, and obviously we're also in the pandemic, so you're barely in uni anyway. It doesn't feel like you're really actually at uni. So that was a bit demoralising, but... And then I was just like, do you know what? Like, yeah, I'm not doing it.
Feels like a slight, like familiar process for creative people in general. It's like trying to tie someone down for 4 years to do one subject when, like, from what I, objectively speaking, like the content you do and all these kind of things seems like you're very creative. And it's like, expecting someone to follow a straight and narrow path for 4 years is quite challenging, I'd imagine.
Yeah, like, it's obviously still being young, and I think obviously everyone's young when they first go to uni most of the time, and you're getting to know yourself more and the sort of way your brain works and what you're built for, and I was getting to that point where I'm like, right, I don't think it's for me. I don't think I'm one of those people. I'm probably someone who wants to maybe carve a bit of my own path. And so, I left. But at the same time, I was still working in a cafe, basically getting paid close to minimum wage. And I'm like, right, well, I still want to be like successful in terms of have a good standard of living, a good income. So I'm like, well, I need to make something of it. And then, the opportunity to apply to Dairy Green came around. I think I was like in my bed, like hungover one morning, and I seen the ad, and I was just like, yeah, why not? I'll just apply. Like, I wasn't ever planning on it. Yeah. I had this like undying loyalty to Perch and Rest, along with the major superiority complex.
It's not when you're hungover.
Yeah, I know. Well, I was just like, oh, a roastery. Like, oh yeah, maybe this is the next step to like get more qualifications in coffee or more of an understanding. Maybe roast some coffee. So I was, I applied, and there's basically like they do everything non-biased. So there's like a blind application process. And I just went through that and really just flushed them out with like big answers that made sense, just talking about how you prioritize tasks and sort of things like that, and got an interview, met the guys, got a job, and yeah, it's been a really great time there. It was actually really gutted to leave. Yeah. but yeah, absolutely best team ever. And I've met a lot of people there that I'll be staying in contact with for a long time. And during that time at Dairy Green, I did a whole bunch of different jobs. You know, like I started out as a roastery assistant. So that's, you know, you what you can expect: packing bags, taking orders, customer service, just working within the roastery. And then because I have a license, I was put onto the van. So then I was doing Tuesday and Thursday deliveries, which used to be my favorite things to do. Like just literally every Tuesday and Thursday, come in, don't need to worry about what the status of how many orders we have is. I'm in the van, I'm at the door, I'm going around seeing all the cafes and people and chatting to them. And that was obviously where the sort of customer facing role started. And then that progressed into training. So any wholesale customers that needed training, I was like, oh, I want to do that. Like I used to love training at Perch and Rest, all the new staff and whatnot. So yeah, started doing the trainings, and then that sort of freed up a bit more time for me from my roastery assistant role to do that. And then I was like, let's get some classes on the go. We need to do classes. Like this is like, you know, the roastery is only open till 8 till 4. There's still time for us to bring some money in, and like, you know, I can do more training and grow that role. And so then we started that as well.
I find that interesting because I was thinking, like, just hearing your story to this point, you know, going from Costa to Perch and Rest, big jump. Then getting to like your next role in a roastery, which is kind of like for a lot of people the dream, you know, stepping stone. Feels like you did that. Like again, you probably maybe don't feel like that yourself, but it feels like you did that relatively quickly. And I guess how much of that? I wonder how much of that is through like right place, right time. Like you say, you're hungover and you just saw a thing, or how much of that is like grit and determination, where you know you were chirping at the door of Perch and Rest and you made your own opportunity there. And then, you know, hearing you then talk about you kind of inspired some of the kind of push on doing more training and stuff like that. Do you think you've made a lot of your own luck for your kind of career so far?
I do think so. Yeah, like to an extent. I think I mean there was probably like, well, it was 2 years from Costa to like 2-3 years from Costa to Perch and Rest, and then about another 3 years from Perch and Rest to Dairy Green, you know, rounded up, and all the time when I was, no matter where I was at each step, I just kept looking at little holes, and I was like, oh, we could be doing this a little bit better, or there's an opportunity here to do this and bring this in, you know. And this whole entire time I'm just absorbing content online, like YouTube, Instagram, the internet, reading about specialty coffee, the market, things people offer, the services they have, and I'm like, why are these things not incorporated here? And so I'd always push for that, and I was probably just nagging and annoying everyone, but they probably know themselves, like that was probably stuff they could do as well. So I always wanted to incorporate that, and sometimes I was successful and everything would move forward a bit, and then I guess that's why I got to that step just very recently.
That's good. And I guess let's talk about the coffee training then. So you've done a lot of that now. You're saying you've done a lot of it at Perch and Rest. You're doing a lot of it at Dairy Green, and you're still continuing to do it as a independent. Like I personally find training quite challenging. I find it frustrating when you're trying to like explain, especially latte art, when you're trying to explain to someone how to do a task, which in your head can seem quite simple because you've done it 1,000 million times. Seeing someone kind of struggle with it, sometimes you're like, oh, but the answer's so obvious. Like, why I take it you've managed to find a bit more patience than I do. Or
yeah, like I have a bit of a system for it. You know, like obviously being like going through that sort of, you know, YouTube route to teach myself a lot of stuff. You know, I learned a lot of things on the job, but a lot of stuff I know is basically self-taught just through reading and watching YouTube videos.
What kind of YouTube videos would you watch?
I mean, you know, I started out like everyone else and watching James Hoffman, and then obviously like Lance Hedrick came along as well with his really in-depth things, which I've taken a lot from. But other than that, you know, I'd watch a bunch of the sort of Australian coffee roaster sort of content channels, and then just a couple more independents, you know, people that are talking about really sub-niche things, like just talking about bar sets alone and grinders and like how they affect flavor, and like, you know, or people that are modding their like home espresso machines, or, you know, just everything, maintenance. Well, a lot of it is equipment focused, but also a lot of it is definitely sciencey to do with extraction and whatnot and coffee. And
is the challenge. There's so much to it. It's like how do you streamline that?
Yeah,
for someone.
With that, I kind of got into the groove of. Right, I've got about 2-3 hours to do this training. Let me see if I can touch all bases that on a simple level, but still have a high quality in terms of incorporating things that are maybe what you would learn within specialty coffee.
Yeah.
A lot of the time I just have a quick chat with people beforehand. I'm like, where are you at in terms of what you know? Have you ever received formal training before? Blah, blah, blah. And then we take it from there, and I just I feel the vibes as we go, and I'm saying, right, okay, I could probably skip the next bit I'm about to do and just jump onto this bit. And I like to keep everything very consistent, so I try and train the same way most of the time, or at least I do it using the same methods. Classes are kind of dynamic, and they can sometimes start with one thing instead of the other, but in terms of like the content itself for each part, it's quite consistent, so I've got it really well rehearsed in my head. And if someone doesn't understand, a lot of the time I'm actually pointing out a lot of the pitfalls that people fall into, and a lot of the time the way their opinion lies or the way they've been doing things falls within one of those pitfalls.
Yeah, interesting.
Doing things slightly like what we would consider maybe wrong.
Yeah.
And then usually it's just a little light bulb goes off, and they're like, oh, okay, right, I get it now. And then that's what I love. Like, I love that bit, and that's what like inspires me to keep going through training and bringing everyone up to that sort of same level together. I'm by no means saying I'm like the all-knowing or almighty or anything. I don't even have a AST qualification, but hopefully one day I can get to that point. But it's I don't think having an AST qualification is also the be-all and end-all either.
Yeah, so we were kind of talking about before about like equipment servicing as well. Like, it's like you can probably get by without, but some people value it more than others, I suppose.
Some people want the bit of paper.
Yeah. Are there any kind of misconceptions you think when you're training people that like happen very commonly? That I'm thinking that I've just been away for the weekend and chatting to people about how they make coffee at home. My sister-in-law has a Sage dual boiler, like I've got as well.
Yeah, that's what I've got. Yeah,
and they're incredible.
Oh, so good.
I was chatting to them about their grinder, and it's almost like that was a bit of an afterthought, and I find that's quite a misconception with when you're training people. You're like, oh, what kind of equipment? And they're like, oh, I've got if they've got a Linea Mini or something, you're like, oh, fantastic. Like, what's your grinder? And it's something
Sage Smart Dual.
It's like a blade grinder. You're like, oh, okay. But
I think pestle and mortar.
Yeah, I think a lot of people think that spend the money on the machine. That obviously is quite an age-old misconception, but the grinder is the most important thing. But do you think there's anything like more granular when you're training that people kind of come in expecting, something, and you can kind of blow their head apart with something else?
Yeah, like I think sometimes when people come for barista training, they just think they're going to learn how to maybe adjust the grind size and pour some latte art. They don't really expect me to go in depth of like what's actually happening when water hits coffee under pressure at a high temperature, and like what things are dissolving into the coffee, and then how do we balance those flavors. And I do touch on that kind of stuff. Obviously depending on what kind of level that cavi's at, because the thing is with being a barista trainer is that I'm catering to all different cafes. You don't have to be strictly speciality. So it might be just people like, who just work anywhere, and they're like, well, we wanted someone into upper standards. So you need to make it approachable for sure. To answer your question, I don't really have anything too much like that. A lot of people sometimes have, I think a big one's getting the milk temperature wrong, depending on what sort of level they're at. But a lot of the time people are used to just sort of blasting the milk and making it go nuclear, or maybe not quite there. But I think that also comes from actually the consumer sort of demand for extra hot drinks, which is frustrating. But also you can totally understand people want to sit with a hot coffee on their train and not drink it for half an hour and then drink it. So probably something along those lines.
Yeah, interesting. Just thinking of another one, like for us, when you tell someone that like coffee is basically a fruit.
Oh yeah.
It's like I've quite enjoyed that conversation. And like quite often when we're talking to staff, we might show them like a picture of a cherry, and it those little things that when you work in coffee, you just obviously inherently know where coffee comes from, but it kind of surprises people somewhat when they see a picture of a cherry, and it's like, all right, what the hell's that? That is what you're drinking.
Sorry.
No, that was it.
Yeah, actually, that just reminds me, I need to definitely get some like visual resources for my trainings.
Yeah.
I saw this little quick, I'm kind of off topic, but these little mini projectors that you can just set up and like blast at a wall or a board. Yeah. So start doing like PowerPoints and get videos and pictures up there.
I got into a horrible habit at home of like I've got one of those and setting it up like on my bed. And just
staring at the ceiling.
Yeah, it's just a bit of a weird thing to do. Just getting like your laptop out, your projector out, just to watch a movie.
What are you doing tonight, mate?
Just watch on the laptop. You have been, or I don't know if you personally or someone that you know does 3D printing.
Yeah, my friend Josh.
Yeah, so Jack just bought a 3D printer, and we were like, oh my god, the world is your oyster. But I know that you've made like. Have you made a WDT tool?
I actually have one of those for you today.
Mate, cool. Sick.
But it's in my bag.
Okay, cool. That's a no prop. Insert it here. Jack, insert this to my hand here. Yeah, I'm interested like trends in specialty coffee. Obviously, like we get on social media at some point, but I think it's interesting how it feels quite like right now the specialty coffee industry. There's a lot of like young people coming through who get really excited about these trends, and I just wonder how hard or easy it is to maybe come up with a product that's like solves a problem and then put it online and see what happens, and like maybe takes a year for people to realize that actually it's doing nothing. But I find it quite interesting. Are there any trends right now that you're kind of really excited about?
Actually, yeah, like the big one you've probably seen is again with your boy Lance, who just came out and said basically that the WDT tools are not as effective as just shaking coffee in a blind shaker.
Interesting.
And then putting it onto your portafilter and distributing it with your hand and tamping. Apparently, you can get on average a whole extra like 1% extraction consistency.
I love that because most people will be like, oh, that's too simple. It's not like visual enough. So they want it to be more complicated than it is.
I know, exactly. Like it's actually really refreshing to like pull back on it a bit and be like, it is simpler than you think.
Yeah.
I think the general basis is if you're still grinding straight into your portafilter, they're definitely good. But if you're grinding to dosing cup, flip it onto the handle and shake it a couple of times, that's actually way better.
Good news, so that's what I do.
That's what they do like in Australia. That's what they've always been doing. Like a thing there is like, only real baristas use dosing cups on their grinders instead of portafilters or whatever.
Have you managed to 3D print a dosing cup yet?
No, I mean like
AdamsCoffeeGlasgow dosing cup.
They're genuinely just something I'd probably just buy, but I guess if you want your custom engraving.
That's interesting. I saw that Lance Hedrick was about to drop a thing about naked portafilters.
Oh yeah, I can't wait for that one.
But he's interesting because he's like really challenging the logic. I love that so much because I do think there is a bit of a sheep mentality sometimes, especially coffee, where you want to be seen to be adopting the latest trend and stuff, and actually it takes quite a lot of balls and bravery to turn that on its head and be like, actually, I think you're all talking shite.
Well, I think like he spent like since he started that whole time building up trust just from like fact dropping just all of his knowledge, on every area of coffee, and now he's at the point where he's probably like, I'm kind of running out of ideas, but also like that I can now start doing stuff, now that with my size and my following, I can start pushing the envelope. Yeah. And that's what he's doing. And so I've been really enjoying all the stuff he's brought out recently. Yeah, nice. So I'm looking forward to that video as well. Apparently people were already getting upset in the comments of his picture post.
I saw his comment. Can we not get emotional?
Yeah, he's not even released the video yet. God, give the man a break.
Quite funny though. We obviously have to talk a bit about Scottish coffee community.
Yes.
Which is something that you're like obviously very passionate about, very connected to, something that I'm very passionate about and try and be as connected. The older you get, it becomes harder with kids to go to all these coffees.
I can imagine.
I can't travel to Dundee like on a Wednesday night. But like, what kind of place do you feel the community's in right now? Do you think it's like in quite a strong place, Scottish?
Yeah, I think it's super strong at the moment. Excuse me. I think it's really strong at the moment. I mean, you've just got all these different people who are constantly like, obviously, like one of the major platforms is Instagram that we all talk on, and we've obviously got like our challenges for like our latte art during the week, and then people are making their own reels, and we're all just constantly sharing and commenting on each other's stuff. Really pushing each other forward. And I think that comes from the fact that all these people are, traditionally. Working as staff in cafes or for businesses instead of being the business owners themselves and having a bit more of that competitive mentality, which I think maybe was at least in Glasgow was a bigger thing back in back in a few years ago, but like you've got this like younger generation of baristas coming forward and sort of just all being mates. Like they're finishing their shifts and going to hang out and go to the pub with each other, not even talking about coffee or anything. You know, until inevitably they start talking about it. But
that feels more reflective of like the bar scene. Like I guess like people, barmen, like what do they care where they work? And like if you work somewhere different, it's like you'll still go out and have a pint together.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, I mean, it makes complete sense. I think there has been a real shift, and like I often think about it and try and like ascertain like what's happened and why it's happened. Like there's been two big shifts for me. Like pre-COVID, probably long before, probably the point when you were joining Perch and Rest. I think you kind of mentioned it earlier. Like Edinburgh seemed like it was quite a hub of Scottish coffee, and it was pushing the envelope slightly. Glasgow at that point was maybe slightly behind. I feel like that script is probably get slammed for saying this, but I feel like, you know, Glasgow's come a long way, and Edinburgh has matured in a slightly different way almost. For me, there's loads of young people coming through in Glasgow, which has created a lot more kind of vibrancy and like enthusiasm for Scottish coffee. Whilst in Edinburgh, it feels like there's been a lot of those cafes that were of that ilk 5, 6, 7 years ago that have now started roasting. They've become like businessmen, and it's like they're maybe like not as proactive in that sense. And it feels like, I don't know, it's a good thing for Scottish coffee. Like on one side, Edinburgh has matured to a level where there's a lot of coffee roasters now, and there's a lot of people, you know, in the mix as coffee businesses. But for Glasgow, it has thrived, and it's been really interesting to see that. But do you think, in general, being in Scotland as a barista, or being in Scotland in the coffee industry, do you feel like we're at any kind of disadvantage as a whole compared to the likes of London or something? I always get really upset when I think of baristas having to leave Scotland to try and like carve a career, because I've seen it so much over the past 5, 6 years. People who've left and gone to X, Y, and Z in London to find themselves, and I'm like, why can't we provide that? You know,
let's just go down to the hub. The community is like just amazing, and I genuinely feel like, you know, regardless of Glasgow and Edinburgh, like Scotland in general, also up in Dundee, we've got like the EH9 guys and whatnot, and then a couple more cafes have popped up there as well. I think everyone's just very much connected, and they're just all kind of like we just want to support each other.
I mean, that's a very good point, because I guess I always think of like the conversation around Scottish coffee quite often revolves
between
around
like the two cities,
and I guess it's interesting to have that conversation, because I'm here sitting in Edinburgh, you're here from Glasgow. They're two quite big hubs of Scottish coffee, but I completely agree, and I think, you know, something that probably we need to build more on is the optics of like what's happening in the Highlands. I know Deer Green have been quite good at that in the past, you know, going to Butte and stuff like that to try and, you know.
Got your like annual like trip up north kind of thing, you know, just making sure that we can in person sort of see all of our customers. I said their customers. I'm still doing that every single day. I'm still one of you guys. Like going up to like Isle of Skye, Aberdeen, even like Orkney, like going up and seeing all those individual people, and then, you know, especially if it's like Orkney, for example, actually doing like a whole day there, a guest shift on bar, maybe host a cupping in the evening, do a training with the staff, like just like all this stuff to like really make them still feel valued. They're not just like in the middle of nowhere and we're just sending coffee every week or whatever. I really like that.
So your experience, have you done some of those trips, or what's been the experience like? You know, like for people listening, I guess, are they smashing it up there? Like, what's the script?
Well, I think it's I don't think anywhere like north of Dundee is like doing things like too crazy at the moment. You know, you've got your odd place that's doing things like pretty well, or sorry, not Dundee. I mean, you've got like a couple of spots in Aberdeen as well. They're doing really well. I think it's one of those things where it's just the further you go up, the less and less there are of specialty spots. But you do get the odd like gem. But yeah, I think it's definitely kind of that way where I just think if you're looking up there, you're kind of looking back in time, like 5 years or something like that. That's probably how I would look at it.
Yeah. Well, I think you almost need one or two specialty cafes to start making specialty coffee more the norm in like a town or whatever.
Yeah.
I guess it's hard if you're like the only one trying to push it and everyone's like, what the hell is this? I mean, you know, that's it's hard to try and build a community of specialty coffee yourself. Like, I find.
Well, to my knowledge, that's what Fraser did in Dundee, and now you've got like 3 new cafes as well, just in the past like 2 years or something. So like clearly he did that, and it was killing it, and everyone's like, let's open a shop in Dundee, you know. And that's sort of what's happened. And now they've got a whole hub themselves, and before you know it, like we're gonna have probably gonna have Dundee Coffee Festival at some point.
Yeah, that's interesting.
You know,
that'd be great.
Yeah,
we
absolutely.
were talking to one of our customers, a guy called Brogan, who him and his mum run Cafe Fika, or just Fika in Forres in Murray, and he's kind of one of a few people who are trying to spearhead this Murray Coffee Festival up there, and like that's where I'm from, and I'm like, it's quite heartwarming to see, you know, that kind of evolution and movement happening, you know, in the place where I grew up, where there was literally, there's definitely none of that. I wonder, like, would I have had to leave if to start a cafe, or you know, if the state of affairs was like it is now? Like, it's quite inspiring. Like, it's nice to know that there are more far-flung areas of Scotland which are starting or have gone on the journey already, to kind of follow suit to a lot of the kind of places like, you know, Arzan Roast or whoever Deer Green have been doing it for a lot longer in Scotland, but. Pretty cool. I
think I didn't actually answer the other part of your question about.
I'm very bad at this.
I'll just start another. No, that's question. Okay. Like
terrible interview.
to go down to like London. I think like what we've just spoke about there is like, to me, like clearly evidence that like we don't have to go anywhere. Like I think it's going to keep building up here. You know, and you know, like a lot of baristas obviously move down because they think, well, that's where the competition scene is, and you know, that's where I can like meet a lot more like like-minded people. When, you know, that is obviously the case, but I also think, you know, here there's more and more people that are, especially that younger generation of baristas that are, you know, born through, or not born through, but like came through on their iPads and YouTube and Instagram. That there is like this whole entire world of that's possible with working in coffee, and so from the get-go they're kind of like almost thinking about that, and not just like I want to like work in a cafe and start a roastery, or you know, whatever it is. There's all these other like more independent focused roles they could move into, sort of like what I'm doing as well. And so I think I want to be like up here, and when, you know, and bring those guys up here to stuff that we make, competitions we host or we start, or you know, all that kind of stuff. So
without being I guess putting ourselves down, do you think there's an element of big fish small pond in Scotland? Do you think if we dumped each other in London, it would be harder for us to gain traction, or do you think like what we're doing up here is very strong and, you know, it would translate well? I've no idea.
I think up here it's very strong, and I think down there it's very saturated. I don't necessarily think there's people down in London and also up here who are doing things at like the highest level possible, and I think like in both places as well there's people doing things at like an okay level, or just like, you know, pretty average or standard. I don't necessarily think that like there's like a higher level, you know, down in London, and that actually applies to anywhere. Like I went to like back in September I went to like Copenhagen, and like I went to like a handful of cafes, both sort of your sort of famous destination spots as well as just sort of every other sort of speciality spot I've seen, and I was like, do you know what, it's just as good back home. I was like, there's nothing here blowing me away, there's no extra level.
Apparently it's so expensive to buy a cup of coffee. I'm going to look this up because I'm going to get it completely wrong. Like buying a cup of coffee in Copenhagen apparently is extortionate. Is that right?
You know, obviously I don't travel too often, so wherever I go anywhere with a new currency, I'm not really clued into how much actual money I'm spending.
Monopoly money.
So I didn't pick up on it too much.
What's 38 krona? This could be complete garbage I'm talking, which should be quite embarrassing. I'll blame it on Wataru, he told me. What is it? £2.90. Okay, forget I said anything. Very cheap. Am I wrong in thinking Wataru told me a flat white was very expensive? And is it? Okay.
Yeah.
Ignore. I must have looked up an old article. So we're not going to get Adam Coffee London anytime soon, basically.
No, even if I move anywhere, the name is staying. Even if I move to like Australia, it's staying.
Fair.
Because I think that would work quite well. People are like, why are you called that? And I'm like, can you not hear by my voice?
Is that something you consider, moving to Australia?
No, I don't.
Just throwing clangers there.
Yeah, no, I don't think I've. I mean, one part of it always comes down to I don't think I have the money to do that. But then people who have like you know, they're students just out of uni, they move to Australia, you know. But I guess
Get paid well in Australia, apparently.
Yeah, you're like baristas in Australia are like rock stars.
Look that
you know, you like meet someone and you're like out and you're like, what do you do? And you're like, oh, I'm a barista, and they're like, oh shit, like you know, apparently that's what I've heard. Right? Yeah, exactly.
Oh, that's cool. That's why it has to be here. I don't know, how do we get to that point? £10 latte.
I'm all for it.
Talking about, I guess, the cultural divide or the difference between English coffee and Scottish coffee in terms of like one of your fortes or that you're known for is your social media. So do you think that there's like, can you feel a difference between the way that like a coffee company would market themselves in say London and how we would market ourselves up here? Does there feel like there's some kind of cultural difference there? I feel like I'm leading you down a path. But
no, that's cool. So like there's obviously two different ways you could look at this. You can look at it from like a business point of view, but also like an independent person with like a personal brand sort of point of view. So like business wise, I think you've got like big names in London that are you know, they're almost trying to be like I kind of almost like relate it to like fashion brands. Like, you know, you've got these like big companies that are financed by a lot of money and they're sort of marketing themselves as like,
do we say them? No.
Huh?
Do we say who they were?
No, I'm not going to say.
No,
but
starring about.
There's one or two, two or three. But they you know they're very serious about everything they do. It's all about just the absolute excellence of coffee, and you know a lot of time I'm like, he's a smile. You know, that's what I feel like whenever I see it. You know, you know, he's a smile.
Yeah. So is that because they're guided to try and keep a very like a straightforward format that reflects the quality of the coffee in a certain way? It's
almost like taking personality out of it. They just want a brand name that's known for whatever they're shooting for, and it's not really about the people behind it necessarily until those people compete in competitions or whatever, and then it's just like, oh yeah, like they'll show that person on the like pedestal and they'll say they came from here, but at the same time, like, I mean, at the same time, that person's still no smiling on the pedestal. It's just like,
what's funny about that is that like I have been led to believe, and maybe I've been led to believe something wrong, but it feels very much to me that people buy into brand stories and like founder stories and all these things, and that's kind of why we're quite transparent and want to
absolutely
put ourselves out there and like talk openly about the business that we care passionately about. But I get that, I agree. You know, sometimes maybe they're quite happy to hide because they're not that invested in the business, you know, maybe financially, but you know, not in a coffee sense.
It needs to be in your blood. Like, at least that's how I would operate with anything I do. Like, I want to be like, I want to put everything I have into it. So the person who I am and my personality like is going to be and like woven through parts of that business, you know. But like for me, like just doing what I'm doing just now, like just comes down to the way like I've built my website, the colors, the fonts, you know, all of that like flows into the way you'll see me in like my videos on social media, you know, not taking things too seriously, still you know, dropping absolute knowledge bombs of how to pour lattes or, you know, whatever, but just making it fun and engaging and enjoyable, you know.
Yeah. I do think that Scotland in general, that is a focus of social media. You know, it's like we certainly try not to be too serious about it. You know, EH9 the same, no, you're the same, no, which is I find quite refreshing. And that's more of the industry I want to be a part of, is one that, you know, isn't too sterile and is quite happy to, you know, be. It's quite Scottish, I guess. Be quite.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah. It's just a Scottish thing in general. I think, it's just like to like
self-deprecating.
Just to have a bit of fun, like not take it too seriously, although you're invested in it. It's like, you know, why would you just want to go through your day like just
be miserable?
Yeah.
Not like seemingly miserable, I'm sure.
Exactly.
So talking, this is a perfect segue. Spaghetti Bolognese Latte.
Oh yeah, let's go.
But I said this before and you like looked a bit awkward, but it's gone low key viral.
Yeah, I mean, it's going there. I'm going to see how it goes.
You had about 26,000 when you arrived.
What?
Yeah, let's see where you're at now.
I didn't actually check it.
Oh, yeah, right. Come on.
No, genuinely, like,
I haven't checked it in 5 minutes.
I just see the
28,000. You've gone off another 2.
Oh, okay. Right. That's the first I've seen that today.
Yeah. That's
nice.
I would say that's viral.
Yeah, I think that's not bad. We'll see how it goes in like a few weeks, because sometimes they drop off and then they just explode after a while.
Yeah,
like that's what happened with the Barista Bromance video with Alex. Yeah. I went to Canada for 2 weeks, and when I was in Canada, it was just going wild. Like every day I'd wake up and all the little notifications would be maxed out. 100.
You do have one video that's got 1 view.
What?
That must be a glitch.
Oh no! So that's that's like from an Instagram live that I like uploaded as a reel and turned it off on the.
I'll watch it again tonight and double your views.
Yeah, I think it comes from the.
Yeah, you've got like some heavy hitters here. This is good. Something that I look. Bruce the Bromance video. That's
the best one ever made.
But do you think that there's something to be said that silly videos, it's far easier to go viral? Like
absolutely.
That's
You almost take the niche out of it a little bit. Like you could be someone who just stands in front of a camera. You've got your phone. You put a trending audio on it, and you like change your clothes a few times, or you. I don't know, just do something silly. Making a viral video doesn't come down to the visual quality, the audio quality. It doesn't come down to anything other than the fact that it just catches, and if it catches, it's usually just because you've piqued someone's curiosity, you've hooked them in. Then once you pick a niche, that your chances of that lower again, and then you pick a topic within that niche and it lowers even more. So it's more like the science behind the algorithms, I think.
So how much of that kind of algorithm and like those drop-offs and stuff, are you studying that to an extent and trying to think how to combat that? Yeah.
But whenever you think
consideration, then it goes into kind of there's a script or there's like a plan in place.
Yeah, like whenever I think I've got my head around it, like I usually just get reminded that it's sometimes completely random. Like I'll put loads of effort into a video and it'll do terrible, and then I'll put like hardly any effort into another video and it'll do amazing.
Yeah.
A lot of time it just comes down to those first couple of seconds, like if you've managed to gauge the attention. And that's why in the Bolognese video, for example, it starts off with Bolognese getting spread. It gets
Bolognese video.
Yeah, the Bolognese coffee video. Yeah. What? It starts off with the Bolognese getting spread on the puck.
Yeah.
Because even though that's not actually part of the drink, it's just that one part is just what they look at and they go, "What the hell?" And then they watch the rest of it.
Yeah.
To be fair, the rest of it is still just as ridiculous.
Yeah.
But that was actually more of a play on what I see on social media with all these different Instagram coffee pages where people are making ridiculous drinks that they're actually serious about promoting. Kind of started off with orange juice and espresso, which I don't think's too crazy. Like I think that can be enjoyed.
Putting an orange in the puck as well. Have you seen that?
Yeah. Nice. All that kind of stuff. Putting sugar on top of an already tamped espresso, like all those stuff I think are okay, but then you get to the point where they're doing stupid, ridiculous things. Yeah, and like mixing butter in and on the or honey, and like I know some of those things have like sort of their historical value or like they come from those sort of things. But
both Lisa Deargreen and I got asked to be a part of an article explaining what we thought of putting olive oil in coffee.
Oh yeah, I remember she was going on about it. Yeah.
It's the first time I've ever heard of it. B, Starbucks are doing it. What have they seen that I've not seen? Yeah. C, I'm not even going to bother trying it. Like, so I'm literally just taking research from online. Like, I'll say this. I've still never tried it. But
it's just people are just bored and they're like, let's find the new big thing. And it's like, just focus on what you're good at.
Probably found it already. Coffee's great. Would you consider yourself an influencer then? Is that like a trainer / influencer?
Yeah,
is that your job title?
By definition, if a brand comes to me and they're like, "Hey, like, do you want to take a free product to show it off?" And I used to be like, "Oh my god, yeah, I'll do that." And I guess even by that point, you could consider me an influencer. But I mean, the word influencer to me is when you put something up and then it makes people do something, which is not the case, from my experience of affiliate schemes. That doesn't tend to work.
You might make someone change how they make coffee at home.
Yeah, that's true. Like through education. Yeah. To be fair, you're right there. Yeah, through like doing tutorials and whatnot.
It's just it's a tricky word, isn't it? It sounds quite.
I prefer content creator. I think that I prefer content creator. Influencer to me, is a very broad. Reaches out to a very broad spectrum of people, which I wouldn't consider myself aligned with.
Yeah, but you do. I don't. Weirdly, we do a lot of content, but because we're a business, we don't get, or we'd be quite happy to get involved with free products, but we don't ever get asked to do anything. Do you get asked a lot? Like, how does it work?
Yeah, like usually it's just that someone reaches out via like an Instagram DM and they're like, "Hey, like, can we send you a bag or can we send you this thing?" And then it's you kind of have to pave your way through and decide if it's worth it or not, because a lot of the time it's actually like if it's a brand I want to work with, or I just really want the piece of kit, I'm like, yeah. But if it's usually, I'll be like, no. Like if I still need to make sure it aligns with my values.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you.
That,
like,
I'm not like, yeah. But now I'm at a point where I'm like, right, I spend like a good amount of time making these videos. Like I also I need to make sure like I'm financially incentivized. So it is I'm now just doing sort of like strictly paid promotions.
Okay, cool.
But it's also only within a class of products or brands or services that I actually value and do agree with.
And would like in the future is a kind of goal, one of your targets, to try and make like that income like a bigger percentage of like what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. Like the way I see it is that like my Instagram page will hopefully just keep growing, and so it will just become more prominent. And you know,
1,000 views. You're growing as it is. That's don't know how many niche specialty products that want to be affiliated with.
I know.
Maybe though. I think that's the challenge, isn't it? Like the silly videos, and we've experienced that, not to the same levels maybe, but we've done silly videos which have, you know, done better, and sometimes you're like, oh, and then but the ones that are more structured and more like talking about a brand, sometimes that doesn't appeal to your audience as much, and those are the ones that you get paid for, so it's quite challenging, I suppose. Like I wonder how you can kind of find a niche that brings them together, where it can go viral but it does help promote like the brands that want to pay you. It's tough. Something
I really struggle with is riding the balance between being an industry professional and like a content creator who doesn't care about what they're doing, like cares about what they're doing but doesn't really have any like values over the consistency of the product, I guess. Like, you know, I want to make sure any video I put out, I could go to anyone that works in the coffee industry, you know, reputable barista trainers, or just people who are known and high up in competitions, or just companies, anyone in general, and they go, that was really cool, I agree with everything you said there, you know, you can be respected by your peers and where you work. But at the same time, that is not a very big group of people, and in a lot of time those things that you do that they might like isn't really like, doesn't catch on for virality. And so at the end of the day, like if you care about growing your status in your account like to a bigger level beyond within just your industry to the public as well, you need to put things in there that will be attractive to them as well. Hence Bolognese video.
Insert Bolognese video here.
Yeah, exactly.
That's interesting. Do you feel like you're kind of cementing your niche now? You're finding what works, you're understanding. I do find like social media is one of these guys are probably bored of me talking about it, but I'm fascinated by it, and I think sometimes it is when you try and go down a formulaic approach of like you think you find what works, like you say, it is completely irrational from time to time. Like something does just completely blow up. That I say that like we have had videos that have done that. We haven't. We've never had a viral video. But it's like you can see some that you put a lot of effort into, and you're like, it just doesn't hit. And then you know others that do, and it's quite frustrating. Sometimes it's really bog standard content which does well, and it can be quite frustrating.
And then you just go whatever, like the algorithm knows best. It just does, you know.
How like what's your sweet spot, do you think, for the quantity of content you kind of put out? Just try and do the same every week in terms of how many pictures or how many videos? There's all reels.
Yeah, I think like ultimately these platforms want you to use like every aspect of what they offer. So like, you know, obviously for me, I like to edit in like a different software, but like editing using the built-in editors, even though they're terrible, like that's going to help. Like you're sticking to their platform, not mentioning like a link in bio, not mentioning, not trying to get them off of the platform, pushing, like on Instagram, carousel posts, normal posts, videos, like doing everything, writing a good caption, using hashtags. Like people say, don't use hashtags anymore. It's all about keywords and SEO. I'm like, no, use everything. Like do everything you can. Like maximize the platform completely. You know, tag people, collaborate with people. Even before you post and after you post, like do like a good 10-20 minutes of interactions with other people, because then you're going to pop up on their feed just from messaging or like commenting on their posts. So that's how you feed it all. You know, you're just feeding a whole entire system to.
That's interesting. Do you put a lot of emphasis on like TikTok, for example, or is it
barely?
Instagram
like
mainly,
I started on Instagram. I didn't actually tell the story. It's basically started off as a diary just to keep track of my latte art progress. I was like, because I was sick of like putting it up on my personal Instagram. I thought my pals are going to get sick of this. Like people I followed at school, they're going to be like, what the hell? So I just started that, and then when I started doing reels, it just started growing really hard. Like, and then before I know it, I had like my first collaboration was Arla Milk. or milk drink, reaching out going, hey, do you want to do like a video showing off our
videos now, haven't you?
Yeah, I know some people refer to me some derogatory terms within the oat milk community.
Oh really?
No, it's don't worry, it's funny. If you know, you know. Yeah, I'll tell you afterwards.
I've got some ideas in my head of what it could be based on what you said. Have you got any? Sorry.
Oh no, I was just going to say I've lost my train of thought.
I'm so bad at interrupting you.
No, that's okay. No,
talking about Arla milk and.
Oh yeah, just first collaboration. That was when it started, and then I was like, right, maybe if I actually be a bit proactive and reach out to people, I'll get some more. And then so I did a bit of that, and then some came and some I got myself, and I probably still don't do it, put enough effort into seeking it out. Now I'm focused on trying to get some of the big players, which takes a bit more time and a bit more negotiation and discussion, and then trying to figure out like how do I price this and all that kind of stuff. It's crazy.
Tough. So are there people you look to, like mentors that you look to, that are happy to give you a heads up, or are you just working this out yourself?
I've not really seeked too much advice from other people. A lot of it does come down to try and just trial and error on my own part, but I think it's the hardest thing ever, especially if like an agency reach out to you and they're like, oh hey, do you want to be like the face of this brand for like a year and do all this stuff? I'm like, yeah, I want to do that. I mean, like as long as, but then I need to check out the machines, for example, is good first. And then, they're like, give us a price. And I'm like, okay, this is the quote. And then they go, oh, we'll get back to you. And then then 3 weeks later, you have to reach out to them. And they go, sorry, we went with someone else. But then I've spoke to like 5 people since then. And 4 of them have said, yeah, we charge way more than you. And then the other one's like, oh, I charge way less. And I'm like, well, I wonder who they went for.
Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it?
And then, I'll never know. Like, if that brand was looking for the cheaper or the more expensive person, or who's more qualified, or,
That's interesting.
So it's just your luck.
I think it's always dangerous to underprice yourself. I mean, at the end of the day, like you've insinuated before, like there's a lot of work that goes into it, and you can't undervalue that.
Yeah.
Which is
something I've learned a lot recently, very very recently in the past couple of weeks, is price accordingly, and you can always negotiate down, but you can't really negotiate up.
Yeah, it's interesting. So do you have any maybe not mentors, but anyone that kind of inspires you or influences you in some way to, like, who do you aspire to be? Lance Hedrick?
Yeah, I mean, like, I've always considered doing like the whole YouTube channel thing. I think that'd be a whole thing to get into and commit to. I just think those guys are so good that it's like hard to like be like, oh, I'm also here, because like I would rather just direct everyone. Definitely. Every single recap email I send from a YouTube from a coffee training, there's links to his videos and other people in there. I'm like, watch these videos. I'm using quite similar language, like, because I like to give people kind of like a barista guide afterwards that's got like everything written down, because trying to learn something in 3 hours, like all the stuff I'm spouting out is not viable completely. And then give them videos to watch, because that's how I learned. And I'm like, honestly, just commit to watching this one video a few times and you will know what you're doing. Like, at least in my case, that's how it helped.
It's funny, like we've done that in the past as well. It's like, there's no point going over old ground. I'm like, these guys have absolutely smashed it. Like, just go and watch this.
And then I still watch them, because now I'm trying to learn about the language they use to describe certain things, so I can make it even easier, or make it clearer for myself, because they're very good at it. So still taking notes, even if it's not necessarily about how to actually do the coffee, but how to communicate how to do the coffee.
Yeah, I think we're the same. We're like, there's no point almost in trying to compete with those guys. Like, there's no point in trying to do product reviews when you've got Lance and Jim Hoffman absolutely smashing that apart for millions of views. Like, to be fair, there's one thing we have done, which was Adrian did for us probably 3 years ago or 4 years ago. It was an Aroma Boy video. That seems to be the one video that they've not done, and it's our like most watched video on YouTube, which is still not very much, but it's quite interesting that it's continued every week. It's like the most viewed video. Yeah,
you need to find the stuff that they've not done yet.
Yeah, exactly.
But also you need to everyone has their own basic tutorial series and blah blah blah. You kind of have to cover all the basic stuff first, and then you can do all those like things that people haven't done yet.
Earn a right to do that.
I think a lot of people will make the argument that it's like all saturated, but at the same time it's not as well. Like, you might just get lucky and you might just get that one mega viral video that shoots you up, and then before you know it, you're just on the same level.
Morgan Eckroth, I'm like, she wasn't doing anything particularly unusual, but it resonated. And
she was making scenarios on TikTok, right? Without speaking in just cafe situations, and then boom.
Interesting. You just never know what people want.
It's because everyone's been a customer in a coffee shop, so they're like, they'll watch it.
Yeah, it's true.
Is that me?
It's familiar, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. We're getting on. We're doing.
Yeah.
This is like 3 times longer already.
Hopefully your cameras don't die.
I know. I was thinking that one there probably will. I want to talk finally just before we end on latte art, because that's another aspect of something that you're obviously very passionate about. Probably the thing I see you associated with the most, with like Swan Wednesdays and all that shit. Is it Swan Wednesday? Yeah. Or is that
it's Swan Wednesday.
Swan Wednesday.
So used to have Matcha Monday. I say used to because I don't do it now, but it's still a thing.
Menstrual Monday now.
Oh yeah, that's what Amy's doing. Yeah. So yeah, there's that. There's Chill Tuesday, Swan Wednesday, Rosetta Thursday, and Free Pour Friday. So we still have Saturday and Sunday.
Well, people working Saturday, Sunday. We should come up with one now.
I'm very, very bad at spontaneous
Saturday
names.
Saturday, slam your fist into a coffee cup. I'll do that. You do that this week and that'll get viral. So yeah, you obviously love latte art.
Yeah, I mean that was where I kind of found my start, sharing those kind of things online. And yeah, I think it's a skill that you can. There's multiple layers to it. You can learn basic shapes, then you can learn the consistency behind it, and then you can learn like just the crazy stuff as well. Or you start experimenting with different styles and emulating people you've seen online. How do they get it that way? Anyway.
Well, no, I don't know. I wasn't leading into it. I was just intrigued to hear where you went with latte art.
Well, yeah. Like,
I do have questions if you want them.
That's me, like trying different things. Yeah. So like now, my thing right now is, I think a lot of people when they get into latte art, they're like, I need to buy a milk jug with a really sharp spout so I can get all these like lines and stuff.
So how much do you notice that difference when you're using those? Because I've had like the same. I've had a barista hustle one at home.
It's my favorite jug of all time.
5 years, and I'm like quite happy with it.
Yeah, my favorite jug of all time. It's not too sharp, not too thin. Not too sharp, not too wide. I think it's a good jack of all trades jug, especially for like working on bar. I think it's the best. But
stuff like the Motto ones with the kind of jutting, I find them extremely hard to work with.
Yeah, like I don't really rate those ones. Like I think your sort of traditional shape, like a barista hustle pitcher, is like a really good starting point. But then the spout and also the length of the spout is so important for whether you're doing like the competition style free pours with all the different combinations of patterns, and you're utilizing the dry foam technique as well.
So for doing like free pour like that, was the barista hustle one too
it's
big?
The spout is not quite sharp enough,
right?
Or long enough, so you don't collect as much dry foam. Okay. It runs out after a while, and you can't like finish the head on a seahorse, for example.
So what should I be buying to be able to do that better?
So there's a really good one by a company called Pisado, and they make a sharp and a wide spouted jug. The sharp spout goes down really low, super sharp, and you can get loads of accuracy. Nice. You've also got the bomber jugs, HMW bomber, which everyone's kind of buying just now. They've got the weird crocodile spout, so it's like a extra layer to collect more dry foam. I could go on all day about it. I don't want to bore you, but for me, I'm now on the wide spouts. I want to get the widest spout possible. Even experiment with the side of the jug, to get these really bold, dramatic lines. Think of them like paintbrushes. Yeah, like Slozettas or Rosetta Revolutions, where the wings wrap all the way up and frame the top part, so it's almost like a sphere with all the ripples inside. Anyway, it's mad.
It's like when I was trying to learn how to learn latte art, it was Chris Back, a Verve, I think at that time. He was like, "This is how you do Rosetta," and I watched it probably about 500 times. Yeah, to learn how to do that. And I thought, like you were saying before, when you worked in a chain, it was like you felt like you were like kingpin. And I had that similar experience. Now I look at what everyone's doing, and I just don't know where to start. Yeah, I feel like I'm so out of the loop. I will try and do like a Swan Wednesday or smash my cup into
Let's do it after this.
Saturday.
Let's get the machine on.
Do that. Let's do it.
There's your additional piece of content.
Yeah, my B-roll. Do you feel there's something that I've been thinking about a lot is just the emphasis that gets put on latte art, I suppose, in maybe not competition, but like SmackDown, like informal competition. So I guess it's a very easy visual thing for people to want to compete in over a few beers in like a closed cafe at night. Something that kind of frustrates me though is sometimes that spills over into like the thing that inspires baristas. Like it happens in our cafe, and I'm sure it happens in others. When actually, being a representative of the roastery more, you're like trying to get people to get inspired in the sensory aspects and like the dial-in process more. Do you think there is like more emphasis put on latte art at the moment in the industry, or do you think it's
I think in like the commodity industry for sure, because I mean dialing in isn't really the biggest aspect of it. Like they have the standard they get it to and then they leave it pretty much. But latte art is always going to be attractive to customers. It's the garnish on top of the coffee that's going to be ideally well made. You know, and at the end of the day, that's a way to communicate to the customer that if I can do this, I probably can do the other part really well. You know, especially in the specialty market. So I think there is an emphasis on good latte art from a customer point of view. Everyone, especially in the social media world we live in, everyone's taking photos of their coffees and putting them online. So it can only help and it can only, you know, benefit. From a barista point of view, I think it really comes down to if you're someone who's like in it to be in it, like if you really want it, like in terms of want to be passionate about it or you are passionate about it, you will learn how to be good at all aspects of coffee regardless. You know, if you're someone who, you know, if you work in a commodity cafe or you're just starting out in a specialty shop, you might be like, oh, I really want to learn the latte art, but you don't even know where to start with coffee, or maybe you don't even drink coffee and you work in a cafe, you know, like that's sort of where some people can be at. So I really think it's just an individual basis.
Yeah, I get that.
But I know what you mean when it comes down to like, why is there so many throwdowns and not really as many sensory, like, you know, why don't we have a Scottish Cup Tasters or, you know, something like that? Where's the emphasis on that stuff to inspire that sort of thing? And I just think it comes down to the fact that, like, for an event, you could just be like, let's just buy some milk and invite people to our cafe, and then boom, we have an event. It's easy to set up.
Yeah, but you know, like you've competed in UKBC, and like I've obviously get sweaty palms whenever I think of entering UKBC, but I've been there and kind of witnessed it. Yeah, and obviously the latte art aspect is tiny part of it. I know they have a separate latte art skill set, which is like a different competition, but it is interesting. Like it's meant to represent the barista journey almost more than any other competition in its entirety, I suppose. So you've got to give very clear directive on, you know, how the coffee tastes, the body, the sweetness, the bitterness, all this stuff. And like all you really need to do to score points, I think, is to get like a heart.
I just did a heart.
Yeah. So it's like, it's quite funny that then that like that's there, but on the other side, like the thing which we're all getting excited about is something that the UKBC, if at least the SCA, considers to be not that important. Quite interesting.
Yeah, I know. It's interesting in that regard. I have a feeling that like a lot of people in the SCA, at least this might be very calling people out, but you know, there's a lot of it which does come down to we're an organisation, we run these things, you know, we're volunteers. Some of the people might not be coffee focused, and they're just like trying to get things in place or get a format that works for the time and the budget and the location, the scale, you know, whatever it is. And so sometimes there is like, you know, people that work within the industry, they read the rule set and they go, why? Like, why does this exist? Yeah. You know, like, I'm sure there's been lots of meetings upon meetings of decisions around certain things, but yeah, I don't know for sure because I've never been on that side of the table. So I can't say for sure, but I think there should be like an emphasis on every aspect.
Interesting. Do we delve deeper on the UKBC or not?
Yeah, I just think
this controversial handling.
The major controversy was obviously to do with the time frame that people were given. Do you want to hear my theory on it?
Yeah, I'd love to.
So that my theory is, you know, like we were discussing earlier with Scotland and England, or the London and the sort of hub, the competitive scene.
Great divide.
Everyone who's competing there, or, you know, working to compete in the UKBCs from there, is probably working on their routine, you know, months in advance, a whole year, you know, whatever it is. And so the whole idea that we've only got 10 days to come up with something, 10 working days, I think Lisa was telling me she worked it out as, or something along those lines, is not really a big deal because you'll already have everything prepared. Yeah. Whereas some people, if they're an up-and-coming barista, say, for example, in Scotland, like the case is, they might be put off by the fact that they've got such little time to compete.
Yeah, it's mad.
But they may not even considered that in the first place, like because it's such like a bubble of we're all competing at high level and we've been practicing for so long. They just negate the fact that maybe people are very new to it.
Yeah, no, definitely.
It's supposed to be inclusive.
Tremendous amount that goes into it. Like, you know, I remember from Kyle doing it last year and kind of helping him with it. It was like, yeah, we worked on it for what we thought was a lot of time. It was probably weeks or months, but it was actually probably just we caught up like for an hour once a week or something, or once a fortnight. But like down there, I'm sure say down there. I don't want it to be I wasn't there at all. Like, but I'm like, you know, they they probably do take it more seriously than we do, but that's probably a direct result of us not being as exposed to it to an extent. You know, I don't know how long they've been doing Glasgow Heats. I know, like, obviously Chris competed, I think it was like 6 or 7 years ago initially.
Yeah, when they stopped doing it for ages and then brought it back.
Yeah, so
I think, I mean, this might be a rumor, but like I've heard that some people, like, you know, with these bigger roasteries down south, like they literally have it written into their contracts, like if you've got this role, like you have to compete, or that could be absolute rubbish, but I'm just saying things I've heard. You know, like that's how much of a focus there is on it, and the tactics that go into getting people onto the podiums is also like crazy. Like, send them everywhere, like all over the place. Like now you've got big roasteries that will basically like, right, we've got a really good coffee, let's get someone with like another passport to do use that coffee in Germany and do the German barista champs, and you do it in London, and then whoever gets through, they're in the world regardless.
So you end up with one company with still like 3 spots in the
series. Exactly, and it's just like trying to turn it into a monopoly, which I don't think is fair. I think it should be the individual who is celebrated. You know, even if you've got a handout from your roastery who, you know, hire you, that's just a benefit and a gain, you know, but ultimately you're the one who's competing. In
some respects, like, all of this can only really be prevented by being more spontaneous. And I know obviously what we're saying is like the Scottish one was spontaneous, but the other ones weren't. But, you know, the Cup Tasters itself is relatively spontaneous in that I've never done it, but
it's easy to go to.
Yeah, everyone's got the starting point, where it's like you're literally put in front of cups, and you
need a spoon and a spittoon.
Because the coffee that we chose for Kyle was not an expensive coffee. Like, we couldn't afford to. It's the first time we ever roasted a geisha. It was like, you know, we were very new to it. And I think when we got to like the next step, going down to London, we were like, holy shit, hearing what people have spent on their coffees.
Yeah, like, it's paid to win to an extent.
Prepared for this. Yeah,
it totally is paid to win. Like, unless if you're not using an experimental Colombian coffee, you're on the back foot. Yeah. No matter what you're wanting to put forward in terms of your theme or your concept, or like, oh well, I can use a pulped natural Brazil, and as long as I tell you what it'll taste like and the sensory behind it, I should technically get all the points, right?
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, the judges will still write things like generic, or, you know, like that's what I had in mind for a natural Ethiopian.
Yeah.
Generic. I was like, what? Just because it's a natural.
Yeah.
Anyway,
that's wild.
But then again, it could have been my extraction wasn't on at the time.
Mental. We'll conclude very soon, but I guess my final question would be like, what's the plan? Like, you're obviously quite fresh faced out of Deer Green.
Yeah.
You're taking this next quite big chapter in your career. Like, A, how you feeling about it, and B, like, what's your plan?
Like, I'm just gonna my whole thing is basically to work, consult for different cafes, bars, restaurants, coffee businesses, individuals, you know, and also a lot of that will be training focused, but also just basically just being an advocate for the Scottish coffee community, bringing everyone up together, being one of those representatives, and just getting involved with anyone I can, be everyone's pal. I don't want to be tied into being us v them or against anything else again. Like, I just want to be friends with everyone. And you don't
want to be tied into us v them.
Us v them. Not talking to them. No, love those guys. Great guys. It's just all about being there for everyone, and hopefully, it goes well. I'm just gonna keep pushing it and see what happens.
Nice. Well, I mean, best of luck with it all. Super excited. Thanks for giving us so much time, and it's, you know,
thank you for having me on. It's been great to come here and finally see behind the scenes at the podcast.
Here we are. I hope you've enjoyed that. That's been fun. We need to do more of these. We need to get more guests on. Maybe Jack will come on. He's behind the camera now. If you've got questions for Adam Coffee Glasgow, how do they find you?
Instagram, AdamsCoffeeGlasgow, or you can email me, adamscoffeeglasgow@gmail.com. Yeah, you know how it works.
Or shoot a comment. We'll pass it on to him.
I don't have
Feed our algorithm as well. But thank you for listening. Thank you for watching, and thank you, Adam, for coming along. It's been fun.
Cheers.
Cheers.